Hello, listening people.
Guten Tag.
Oh boy, get that Nazi language out of here, Bartek.
Taking off the lederhosen. That's my name and you're Ryan.
And I'm Ryan, and we are spitting Polish, likingly because we're always spitting. And well, I happen to be Polish. I don't know about you this episode with your Guten Tag and Heils.
But I took off the lederhosen. I didn't say Heil, so it means I'm Polish.
Okay. Is it only Germans who wear lederhosens, or do other countries do that as well? Like, do the Swedes?
I'm just gonna take a guess that they're the only ones that would call it a lederhosen, but maybe there's an equivalence in other countries.
Ooh, we're gonna have to ask every European country one at a time, individually.
We call it lederhosen, but it's not a German word. It's not a Deutsch word.
So, this is our podcast where we talk about lederhosens. It's called Pictures Lederhosen.
Swallow in German.
Pictures Powwow, the show, is what we're actually doing. The one that we do in which we cover a movie that has come recommended, whether that recommendation is from Bartek, myself, or the listening people. Bartek, it was a pick from you this episode, and it was a German movie, hence all the German banter. I mean, as two Polish people, the only time we reference Germany is in a negative sense. So it wasn't
just random gratuitous German guys. It was a reference.
Yeah, exactly. It was a reference to the film, which was called Achtung Baby, or whatever.
Achtung Baby, Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen, yes. So what's the film?
The English title is The Wave. The German title is Die Welle.
Die Welle, from 2008, to be precise, because when I told my parents that I was watching The Wave, they were like, oh, I know that movie. And I'm like, yeah, the German one? And they're like, no.
It was like a made-for-TV
There's
version.
a 2015
different
The
one.
Wave movie called The Wave, and I think it's a Norwegian movie about monsters or something or other. And apparently that movie's very, very good too. So 2008, The Wave, or Die Welle. So Bartek.
Yes.
You picked this.
I did.
So obviously you're going to tell everyone that if they haven't watched this before, they should, before we talk about it in depth, so that they don't get spoiled. Is that what you're going to say?
You said it, not me.
Well, I'm questioning, are you going to say that?
Well, you've already said it.
But
so.
are you going to say it?
Would it be redundant if I said yes?
No?
Then yes.
Okay, and he said it. There you go. You heard it from his mouth. So
hey guys, watch the film before listening to this episode if you want. I recommend it.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about it in depth. So it's a film that I'm pretty sure not everyone has seen. I had never heard of it before. So
yeah, for me, literally a few weeks ago, I was thinking of, what are some foreign films that I could do that I've seen? And this one just snapped into my head like, oh yeah, I have seen that.
Because I was going to question, why? So our history with this, like I just said, I had never seen this before or heard of it before. I will be honest, I haven't watched or heard of many German films. I've seen Goodbye Lenin, which I think is like a big one. That's a big one if you know it. Where it's like that's the one where it's like this mother, she has like a coma or gets knocked unconscious or whatever, and like the whole era of the wall in Germany has been torn down and whatever, but they want to keep up the pretense.
And please don't forget Thunderpants was part German.
Well, I thought that was implied.
Yes. Honestly, I'm not sure if I have seen any other German films myself either.
Not Inglourious Bastards?
I mean, I've seen that.
There you go, nailed it.
So
and
Thunderpants.
That's like 90% German.
Yeah, that's true.
15% French, 5% English.
15 might be a bit generous, but it was a good percentage, whatever it was.
Yeah, so I went over 100 there, by the way. I went to 110.
I've seen 100% French films.
So, you had seen this when and why and how?
I saw this when I was in Year 11 Psychology.
Of course.
This fun fact for people that are fans of this podcast, that's where I really made my friendship with Reese, a thing.
A frequent guest, Reese.
Yes, because I went to a second high school starting in Year 11, and that's where Reese was, and we were in that class together, so we just sat next to each other and goofed around and learned.
See, I thought you specifically chose this film as well, not just because you had seen it, but because one of the characters looks strikingly like a blonde version of your friend Malloy. That's in this film. The character of Kevin.
Oh, the rich one.
The rich one looks like your good friend Malloy, but blonde and more European, and I was just like, "Yep, that looks like Malloy."
I need to see.
Pal
I need,
Malloy.
I need to see him again, but I think I might know what you were talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, he chose it for the fact that we couldn't get Malloy on the show.
But yeah, we watched this film in Year 11 psychology because apparently, just to give some backstory to the basis of this film, back in the 60s, an American teacher tried to do an experiment like this, and apparently it wasn't as dramatic as what this film
You don't
shows.
say.
But the guy apparently has seen this film, and he says that there are similarities. And also in Year 11 psychology, we were learning about the Stanford prison experiments.
Yes, I was gonna say when watching this was reminded of that, and there is a movie of that that's also very good. It's worth a watch. That one takes some dramatic liberties too, but
I remember that when we were studying psychology, we didn't really refer to these experiments by the title. We usually referred to them by the people who ran them. So I think that one was, his name's Zimbardo or something like that. So every time I see Stanford Prison Experiment, I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's Zimbardo, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Yep. But anyway,
Who was played in the movie version by Billy Crudup, who was the big blue guy in the Watchmen movie.
I haven't seen Watchmen.
But you know of the big blue guy with the big blue dick? Dr. Manhattan?
I've heard of the dick.
I've heard of the dick. I haven't seen it, though. I've felt it. But I haven't seen it. I've heard of it. Tasted, maybe.
Not yet. Yeah, so we saw this film in a Year 11 psychology class, and I remember it, obviously it had a bunch of extreme things happen in it, but I'd kind of forgotten about it over the years, and then again, a few weeks ago, I remembered it. I'm like, oh yeah, and I messaged Reese asking hey, remember this film, The Wave, we saw? Do you remember if it was any good or not? And he gave me this vague answer of it was effective at delivering its message. And I was like, that's a compliment, but not really an answer. But
So, can you answer that question now that you've rewatched it?
I actually quite enjoyed it.
Very, very much? You very much enjoyed it? Do you think it stands above the statement that Reese said? Do you think it stands on its own as just a film, or is it a film that is, it is just effective at what it's trying to deliver?
I think it's just a good film.
I
Not great, but
I
good.
enjoyed this film. I don't really have any major issues with it. I do, however, agree with the statement of it is an effective movie at delivering what it's trying to get across, to the point in which rewatchability of this is going to be very sparse. This will be one that I would only revisit
One
a
and done,
handful
or-
of
yeah.
times over a long period of time, just because it is very much a message movie. This is no movie about characters, really. There are character stuff in there, but
a lot of archetypal characters. Yeah.
but not even that. It doesn't even matter about that. It's more about what the idea is. This idea of basically starting a fascist cult in your school classroom setting and it spreading. That's what this is more about than your typical 3-act structure. Oh, the main character has an arc and learns this, this, and this. It's that stuff does happen in ways, but it's not as prevalent. So that kind of thing makes it a little bit tougher of a rewatch when it is more of a, not just concept movie, but a message movie. But honestly, I enjoyed this movie very much. I found it very striking. I thought the visuals of the movie was very good. I thought the pacing and the tone was very good. And the ominous feeling of dread was very prevalent and very well handled. Like I said, very few problems. I do have one major problem, but it's it makes sense in the context of the film, but it's still kind of one of those problems that I would give a pass because it's just me being a film nerd or film fan, where I'm just the character of Tim, the shooter character, I found him a little too obvious. Obvious what that character was from the very, very beginning. I didn't feel the subtlety with him in comparison to every other character, even if they were broad archetypes. I found that particular character was a little too on the nose.
Yeah, from his first
obvious.
scene, you could tell immediately that, for everyone that hasn't seen it or don't remember, he's riding a motorcycle. He comes up to these guys that are very much of the streets, much like John Peters, and classic John Peters joke. And he gives them, the drugs that's they very much, the dialogue indicates, is a big amount, high quality, and if cops see you with this, you're in big trouble. They ask him how much, and he's just got this very vacant smile on his face. It's like, you guys are my homies, no charge. And it's just like, oh, this guy's clearly like,
got something wrong.
He's got issues and he wants to please people.
And just looking at him, he has that haircut and that kind of vacant expression and the awkward clothes, and it's just like,
And as the film goes on, he gets really, really quickly into the entire experiment.
I'm not saying that there aren't people like that. I mean, but it's just like, for a film, it's just like, if you know films, it's very obvious where it was going with that. As soon as they introduced that he had a gun and he said it wasn't a real gun, you're like, of course it is, because look at him. This obviously is. And then later on, when it comes into play and you're like, obvious, like, it was a little bit too on the nose for that. But other than that, I really found this movie effective. Were there any so Bartek, you do watch some foreign films, a little more than I do, I would say, mainly because
not as often as I'd like to, but definitely I do. Yeah.
How frequent of a visitor of Europe are you when it comes to foreign films?
I'd say when I do watch a foreign film, I was going to say most of them, but now I just remembered I watch Bollywood, so...
And or animes.
Yeah, not as much films as I'd like, but fair number of European stuff. I've seen some from various European countries.
Any particular standouts of European movies that you can think of that you've enjoyed, or any country in particular from Europe that you've enjoyed cinema from?
You've seen The Hunt from Denmark, yeah?
Yes.
That one is one I really like, and I always wonder, like, maybe I'll pick it for the podcast
That's
sometime.
the only one from Denmark I've ever watched.
Have I seen anything else from Denmark? Maybe that's it from Denmark, yeah.
Because I've only seen Mads Mikkelsen in English-speaking roles other than that. Or movies where it's like he's forced to speak another language, but they're like Western movies, like, like Hollywood or English.
I mean, I'm guessing like things like Spice World, Algie and the House don't count for the Europe we're talking about.
No. No, nor does Borat. Borat does take place in Kazakhstan for a little while, and he speaks a bunch of different languages.
Actor. I don't know what country was behind that production, though.
Oh, England.
England.
Or America. But any standout foreign films other than The Hunt, or countries that you particularly enjoy or want to see more films from?
Let's see. What else have I seen movies from? The few Polish films I've seen are...
Fine.
I guess effective at their message, like a lot of war films, like Cut-In, stuff like that.
God, I've actually heard that Polish films are really good, like especially the ones that aren't just about the war or the German, like the Russian stuff or the German stuff.
Or their romantic comedies apparently are mediocre.
Do they have the Polish lector over them, even though it's in Polish?
They should really make a parody film about that guy or something like that. I remember a couple of years ago when Deadpool was being released in cinemas, Poland had this like really staunch thing about how we are not going to put Deadpool in our cinemas because we want to promote Polish films.
Yes.
And a lot of people were very very proud of them, but then another part of the people were like, yeah, but the Polish film that you're putting in instead is just another crappy romantic comedy or something like that.
See, for me, I've watched a lot of European films, but, I'm tending at late to be drawn to more Asian cinema. Obviously, South Korea has been very popular, but also I've been watching some movies from the Philippines, Japan as well, not just animated films, but live action. But when it comes to Europe, I've always been fascinated with... I mean, it sounds pretentious, but the French do make good movies. Like
The Untouchables was one I've seen that's really good.
And I can't remember the name of the guy who did it, but the director. But his big Western movie was Alien 4: Resurrection. But that guy did Amelie, and the one that you would love, The Delicatessen. That one's amazing. You would love that movie so much, and maybe we'll do it on the show. But those are some standouts, and obviously Bartek and I have studied. We did study some film at certain points, and we watched some different foreign movies. And there was that French movie that I'm forgetting the title of. That was that surrealist movie.
Was it Belle de Jour?
Yeah, Belle de Jour. I really enjoyed that. That was one of my favorites from that course, even though everyone else hated it. But then there were French films like Breathless. That I was like, get the fuck out of here! I don't need that new wave bullshit. shits.
Was that the one where early on the guy was like shooting the sun with a gun?
I assume that was the one that I did, and my film lecturer was like, "So, what did we all think of the movie?" And no one really had anything to say. And then I gave really detailed reasons why I did not enjoy it and did not care for it, but I respected it. And he was just like, "Oh, well, that's my favorite film in the whole entire curriculum," and he was really offended at me.
You should have been like, you're old wave.
Your old wave. So
Yeah, I'm thinking of a bunch of European countries that I've seen a film from, but I'm like, have I only seen one?
yeah.
And then there are other films I'm thinking like, that was a foreign film, but what country was it?
And obviously the old country
Oh,
of
of course,
Czechoslovakia.
yes.
Bartek and I like to watch old Czechoslovakian movies or Czech movie or Slovakian movies, depending where
They've
they
been
fall
they've
now.
been all like 60s and 70s, right?
60s, 70s
We've
Czechoslovakian
seen
movies.
4 at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
We've seen one of them multiple times.
We'll do it on the show one day, I swear.
We should.
So to get back to this movie, German movie, yeah, I don't think I've really seen many German movies before, but here's the thing. I recognize quite a few of the actors in this.
Oh, okay.
So the guy who looks like our good friend Malloy, and the main student guy whose name is escaping me, Marco. Those two guys play best friends in the TV show Sense8, the Netflix show made by the same guy who did the Babylon 5 and by the Wachowskis. So as soon as I saw them two, I was like, oh, good. I know that there's going to be good acting in this. Like, I've already seen these guys act before. That's always like a benefit too when you're watching something where you see some reliable actors and you go, oh, cool. And they're speaking just full German in this, and that show they speak a mixture of German and English. And it was weird to see them be adversarial in this movie because in that show they're like the bestest of friends. And the guy who plays Kevin is called Felix in that show, and he doesn't have peroxide blonde hair. He has like just normal brown hair. So I was like thrown off with like, oh my god.
Do these two characters interact in this film?
Yeah, they do. They do. There's that scene where Kevin is like, I want to come back and join the wave, and he's like, I don't think you should. And
yeah.
they have interactions throughout, but not as heavy as others. But it was kind of weird to see them adversarial in this. So I enjoyed that, and I didn't look it up, but I do recognize the teacher from something, but I didn't get a chance to look up the teacher. But I really enjoyed the concept of this movie. And then afterwards, when I looked it up, I was shocked to see the original story and how that unfolded and where that was set. Because this movie, it really does benefit from it being in Germany. The story.
Yeah.
The history of Germany.
In the early parts of the film, before they introduce like what they're going to do in the class, they have the class is a class on autocracy. And there's a lot of mentions from the students, like very much indicating how Germany treats the fact, what they were like in World War II. And they're like, we get it, the Nazis are bad, we're never going to live it down. When we do this, it always goes wrong or something like that.
Yeah, and there's that thing of the debate of can Germany be ever into nationalism in any way?
That's the thing that I was trying to say, yeah.
And I found that a very interesting idea because from an outsider perspective, I've met a lot of Europeans, like I've had exchange students in my school, or met a lot of people who are from European countries that were neutral or siding with the Germans during the Second World War, and their whole thing is like they don't know nothing about the Second World War because that's like cut out information in certain other countries. But with Germany, I can't remember how it fully goes there. Like I know that there's lots of we don't talk about this or you don't show that or whatever, but at the same time there's also obviously got to be a lot of information talked about it because it's such a pivotal part of their nation.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Like they learn what they did wrong basically in World War II and to like learn from that.
But to see it done in this movie to give a different context from an outsider perspective or from our perspective, it was very interesting because these are all concepts I've never thought of before. Like, you think of Germany now and you just go, oh, they've moved beyond that. Like everything's fine. Like, yeah, they have neo-Nazis, but every country has neo-Nazis. Like, there's always those things, but like this question of can we ever have any nationalism in any way, shape, or form? Is showing the German flag at a football match too overt?
Yeah,
or
all
that.
That's what triggered this whole like nationalism thing. It's just like, oh, we saw German flags at a football game, and we thought that was kind of weird.
And I find that so fascinating. Then obviously the debate of since we went through a fascist regime, that will never happen again because we're too enlightened now, or we've gone past that.
Yeah,
And you shake your head going, no, 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 no.
you're still human.
You're still humans. But to see how they get exploited and manipulated and how everyone falls into these roles and patterns and how everyone, like, joins in and the
Yeah.
people who don't join in get excluded, just like how fascism works.
And not to this is jumping right to the end, but also at the very climax of this, passion, when he asks, like, what do we do with this guy who's betrayed us? And suddenly then they're like, wait a second, this is fucked up. We can't just, like, kill him or anything.
Yeah, the bully guy, the big fat
Bomber.
bomber, yeah. Yeah, I found that very interesting, that questioning, and the film explores that. Like, it wasn't just like for a few scenes. That's what the whole film is about. It's a thesis. It's a dissection. It is a class of this, and obviously the film is taking dramatic liberties. Obviously, you have to accept that. Like, I found it a little hard to swallow at certain points that this is taking place in 1 week.
Yeah.
That it escalates so quickly and so fast.
I think even before, because the film frequently gives you titles like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is the end. I think before even Wednesday happened, some big things had already happened, and I was like, oh, it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, and like I have nitpicks and things that bug me, but I was swallowed into the narrative of the film enough to let those things slide or not let them impede the enjoyment of the film. Like, yeah, it felt awful quick for them to rise to this level. Like, maybe if it was 2 weeks, I could feel it better, but like just
I feel like
5 days
when
was
they
a little
were
too quick for my liking.
Yeah, when they were tagging the town, I thought, like, this is a bit quick.
Yeah, and and it was very, very quick, but I understand it's a film. You need things to do that, but and they wanted to have that framing mechanism of see how quickly one can fall into fascism, which is fair enough. The film did offset me to begin with because they were playing a song by the band The Ramones, but it wasn't sung by the Ramones.
Cover or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the guy's wearing a Ramones t-shirt, and I'm like, well, fucking what? Could they not afford the actual Ramones song?
I love the Ramones, but this cover's better.
Yeah, like, very odd choice. So that threw me off the beaten track. And there's, just to talk about some negatives, I would have liked a bit more from the school faculty as a thing. Like, that other teacher guy, he just goes away.
Yeah, after...
And I thought he was going to be more of an adversarial foil, or even the guy's lead teacher's wife.
Yeah.
She should have been more vocal, but it kind of felt like we've got to be in the madness.
You see her a little bit in the first third, then there's like a, final scene, or 2 final scenes with her where things go to shit.
Yeah, and I felt like I wish that we saw more of the school faculty. The closest that we get that I thought was a real throwing the wrench in was when the principal's like, I'm on your side. But at the same time, I felt like that should have come earlier in the film, because my big question was that I couldn't get past was our lead student's girlfriend becomes disillusioned and she joins up with a resistance group, basically, and they hand out flyers. And my big thing that I couldn't get past with that story is we never saw them go to the school administration and complain. Wouldn't that be the first thing you would do?
Yeah,
you wouldn't be printing out things and whatnot. And I thought, like, if they introduced the principal thing a little earlier and then had the students go and they got pushed back because the administration of the school was backing him, but we never saw that. So that was like that subplot, that side story, I just couldn't buy it as strongly as the film wanted me to, because my logic of this being a real world scenario based on true events, obviously fictionalized for some degree, I just go, what? She never talked to her parents and they never talked to the school, or she didn't talk to the school? Like, I find that very unbelievable.
Yeah, if we had that, you could have, and look, this is obvious, but like with the fact that the teacher is, the leader of this group, it's obviously an analogy to Hitler.
Yeah.
And if you had this thing of like even talking to the people above him doesn't work, it almost solidifies like, oh, Hitler here has all the power.
And then wouldn't it be cool if maybe the administration from the school, after she's talked to them or talked to the parents, maybe convinced her parents of the values of this, and then she's having it from all sides. That could have been because we introduced her parents and then they never come back.
Yeah, the little brother comes back sort of.
Yeah, like that's something that's frequent enough. But her parents are introduced for no real reason other than that we show that they're sexually deviant in the house, and that was it. And I'm like, okay, fun gag, but like, where does this go?
Do we see the mother after she tries on the like white shirt?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing that bugs me. But then you watch it and the performances, even though there's a language barrier, you tell that these performances are just so good. Like, Rainer, that guy, he's so good. And the way that he falls into this fascist leader role and his struggle and then acceptance of it and then struggle again.
You could buy him as like, yeah, because the whole thing about him at the beginning is that he's a charismatic teacher and a lot of people are doing his class, which he isn't very passionate about just because they like him.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, he's a teacher who's like, I don't give a shit about teaching, but I actually do.
And he's got those two facets. He's got that like cool, detached kind of thing, rock and roll high school. But then when he's being the coach of the water polo team,
he's like, very serious.
He's super like sports coach.
Yeah, which I found very interesting. What are some things you want to talk about when it comes to this movie? What is something that stuck with you on this watch?
Well, definitely what we were talking about earlier about, how they view Germany, the fascist stuff. I noticed on this viewing that obviously a lot of the students do fall into certain like archetypes.
Yeah.
And that had a, positive effect of like I might not remember a lot of their names, but
you remember their type.
But I remember their types and like the ways that what they got out of the wave and like how they went to shit. So that was a really good use of archetypes.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was like, although, archetypes and character types can be a little bit annoying at times when you watch a movie. We've complained about this on the show before. Sometimes, I mean, you have them there for a reason sometimes, but
they exist for a reason,
but I do see that someone could get a bit tired of it, especially when it's a school setting.
Yeah.
Because school setting environments always have the same archetypes. You have
the cliques,
the cliques, the nerds, the jocks, the bullies,
the awkward kids,
the
sports,
token minority,
the Turkish guy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, you always have...
Yeah, but considering what this film
these things, you have the stuffy old teacher who doesn't understand the young hip ways of the younger teacher who's like, yeah, anarchy. But, like, that's what I mean, like... I wish that teacher got to be in it more because he could have been a great foil. Because in the end, that teacher was right. But we never get that satisfaction of any of that because he appears in like 2-3 scenes.
Yeah, he appears once to be like, well, I've taken the class you wanted, have fun with this one. He appears in a scene where he's getting annoyed that they're stomping on his ceiling. And then he's got that, like, haha, got him scene where it's like, my students are annoyed. His students turn up. We're not annoyed.
Yeah, exactly. And I swear, to be honest, that him complaining about... Oh, yeah. Him complaining about the foot stomping scene and that scene with the kids are basically joined scenes. They happen in quick succession. So he's only in it for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, that's generous.
That's very generous.
I don't even know if we could say 3.
But to go on some more positives about this, I thought the music was very good when it was not the cover of the Ramones song. I thought that they did a really fun job of editing the frantic nature of party scenes and when they were spray painting all over the place, like the quick edits. And the cinematography being very handheld and shaky was very beneficial to adding to that frantic chaos of a bunch of young people running around being silly and immature
Yeah,
and whatnot.
as much as I said earlier about how I felt that came too quickly, it was well done.
It was well done. I agree. It did feel a little bit rushed, and there's some certain elements that don't fully work. Like it introduces the anarchists are an actual gang in town,
Yeah.
and they don't really factor into anything other than showing off that Tim has a gun.
Yeah, at first
That's like literally what the anarchists are there to exist for. So Tim can show off that he has a gun early in the movie.
Yeah, but before that scene, two guys turned up and they were called and the wave people called them like anarchos, and I was like, oh, is that just like their insult? But then it turned out like, oh no, they're actually from a gang called the Anarchists.
Yeah, and they were bullying Tim. It's like they only existed so that they could show that Tim has a gun. It's literally Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, and the first two, like, because them picking on Tim showed like this instant idea of like, oh, the wave members, they're wearing their uniforms, they see one of them's in trouble, they immediately feel compelled to help. So
exactly,
it introduces like the community outside of the classroom aspect.
the comradeship,
and the fact that Tim's got real friends now, and one of them's a bully, and that's development.
Yeah, it is development. Yeah. This film is very haunting, though. This, it gives you this real, like, oh, no, because, if you know anything about fascism and you know anything about all of this, the way that these characters don't understand that they're fascists is very compellingly done for my money. Like, you understand how they don't understand that they're falling into fascism, because for them, they're getting nothing but perks and rewards and benefits from being fascists, while everyone else isn't. And for them, it's like, well, we're not having any negative repercussions to ourselves, so how are we being bad? In fact, it's you who's being bad. You should join us. I also felt like maybe, like, I get it, but maybe I would have liked a little bit more of an understanding of the ideology of the wave, but at the same time, that's not the pure point.
Yeah.
But there is a point where you go, yeah, but what are you getting out of this?
Yeah, it was meant to be because it was introduced, as a class experiment. It was just meant to exist, within the class and like, outside the class, just like on online sphere or something like that. So it was only meant to be a microcosm of any sort of like real ideology. It's like the fact that they existed as a community just created an ideology out of nowhere almost.
Yeah, well, they do have the ideology of discipline, like, was it order through discipline, I guess, which is there, but I felt like there comes a point where it's like a little bit more fleshing out, but at the same time, I understand why it isn't there. Yeah, it's a microcosm. It's rushing through these things. I get it.
It also did that like classroom thing where they like quickly established some rules. Like, who's going to be the leader? The teacher is? Okay, good. What are some things that an autocracy needs to have? Okay, we'll have that.
Yeah.
And that's basically the setup.
And they do those things, and it's done very, very well. Yeah, it's very haunting. And then this film came out 12 years ago.
Yeah, 2008.
And boy, has it held up, huh? Let's talk about the modern context of today.
When I first saw it, it was only 2 years old. Now it's 12.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Isn't that great? Yeah, it's very haunting to watch this movie today, especially in an era now. Not saying that we haven't had this be something growing. This was growing back then, but we live in an era now, obviously, in a modern context of neo-Nazism being very prevalent.
There are a lot of jokes online about like, hey, remember when America generally agreed that Nazis are a bad thing?
Yeah, or any Western country agreed that Nazis were bad things, because Australia, we have it too. England has it. England's always kind of had neo-Nazi stuff going on for quite some time, but like not as high as publicized as America. Obviously with America, I think the big thing is they have like the neo-Nazis openly like backing a big political candidate who is the literal president of America, Donald Trump, and he acknowledges that they exist and doesn't really condone them. I think that's the big thing, and then that fuels more and more and more.
Doesn't condemn them, yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't condemn them, sorry. And then he condones them. But then, obviously, then there's all these fractured off groups that are very fascist in their own rights. You got the men's rights activists. You got, the incels. You got all these different little weirdo factionists groups that you see that this film is, like, warning us you could easily fall down these rabbit holes. And good people like Marco can turn bad. Like, he hits his girlfriend, and I love that scene where he talks to Raina about how, like, this fascist bullshit, like, look what's maybe done.
It's
Like,
like, yeah,
I love her, but yet I hit her. Like,
he went from being really into the wave to immediately seeing like they've turned me into a monster like within one action. So
and he was cognitive enough to realize that that was a bad thing.
Hmm.
While others in the group don't realize the bad things that they're doing. Tim obviously is the example, but then also the Turkish guy. He nearly drowns another guy in the pool, like, and they're doing the water polo. And he has no regret about doing that. Like, that kind of thing, like, and obviously them when the match is happening and the crowd getting into a fight, none of them acknowledge the fact that it's their fault. They all think it's Marco's girlfriend's fault for these flyers, but it was already kind of starting off before then. And the acknowledgement of who holds the blame in these kind of fascist groups are always, oh, it's someone else, it's never our responsibility, or a lot of these kind of groups. And the film does a really great job of showing that mentality and how people can feel that way and push the blame onto other groups, other people, even if they're not responsible. I also think that this film did a really good job of suspense in terms of, I felt really suspenseful when she was
the school at night.
I thought something was going to happen there.
It's like not out of, I mean, obviously it would be an exaggeration of like real life, but it's like, has this group gotten so crazy that there is someone like stalking the school at night watching her?
Like, are they going to actually strike her down?
Mm.
I loved the weird touch that the first people to leave the wave is the Malloy character, I like to call him, just because he's a dickhead, and then he comes back and joins them because he has no friends.
His reputation, yeah. You were mentioning earlier about how, like, the film makes you feel uncomfortable and stuff. He leaves when it was just a little bit, and he's just like, this is weird. It's like he was seeing it from the beginning, but he still gets indoctrinated later.
Yeah, just because he has no one to hang out with.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what they discuss too, of like all these elements that lead people to join these groups and these ideologies and these groups. Ideas of fascism, all that is
people lose their individuality when they're in a group, they say.
Exactly. And, I enjoyed that. But also, like, I like that he never fully is indoctrinated because he's still got his angle about it.
And he doesn't end up wearing the uniform, does he?
No. Oh, maybe when they go to the pool, because everyone is, but I can't fully remember. But I
think he was always like sort of on probation. Like, okay.
Yeah, I was expecting, honestly, with that, if this was a miniseries or a longer movie or whatever, I was expecting, honestly, him to be coming in. And he would start a splinter group within the, like, how with all these groups, there's always like different factions of things, and like he would accidentally, but somehow actually become a leader, like he wanted to be. Like, he would corrupt the ones in the group that is already corrupted to do his own version, and I thought that would be an interesting idea to explore if this was like a mini-series. I could see this being a mini-series idea,
if they wanted to delve away a bit more from the historical analogies, I think.
Man, this could be
did the Nazis have like something like that happen?
What? Little groups within groups?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, somewhat, but maybe not under the Nazi government itself. But fascism always has those different split sides. I mean, look at all the different groups of neo-Nazis and Nazisms that spawned since World War II. You have, all the different neo-Nazi groups like the Fourth Reich, and on it goes. Like all these different groups of neo-Nazis and Nazis that don't like one another because they all have different viewpoints. And and this doesn't obviously factor into just Nazism or fascism. These happen to all kind of groups of things. Like you have different waves of feminism.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
Or, you have TERFs and you have this, and just several groups. That's not comparing. I'm not trying to compare fascism and feminism. That's just like a thing. Like with all these different subcultures and groups, you're going to have splinters off in each one where everyone has a different viewpoint and they feel strongly about it.
Yes, but if the dots connect, feminists, maybe you're Nazis.
Feminazis is what they're called.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
You forgot that phrase.
I'm bad at making fun of people.
Me bad. But yeah, I found this a very compelling watch. Any problems that you had with this movie?
I feel like throughout the middle point of the film, that's where we focus a lot more on the students than on Rainer himself. And I felt like when it came to the point where his wife was chewing him out about how, this has changed you, I felt like it might have been a bit more effective if they'd shown a bit more of how it changed him. Because, like, when he's in class, obviously he's the leader, and I just saw that as him following, like, his lesson
acting.
plan, his acting and all that. And I know that, like, obviously when the principal, like, complimented him and, like, he
got an ego boost.
and he was talking about how, my students, they're really engaged now. I didn't really see his changes as being that negative, just more so a bit oblivious.
Yeah, but I think that's what she was arguing too. In that scene's defense, she was arguing that he's being oblivious. But then
it came across like she was calling him a monster, though.
His outburst is what made her go into that mode, I think, of her calling him monster, because he's saying all these terrible things and he means them. That's
obviously when that happens, that's an obvious change. But because the film believes that up to that point he's been established as that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think he needed more foils from the school administration to also fuel this argument that he has that he doesn't get respect from the other teachers about what he's teaching. Because I saw how that they connect those dots, but it's a very, very loose connection. And I think that needed to be built up more. So when he does explode at his wife and he has this built-in resentment, maybe we could see more clear evidence that he can draw upon for this, because really it's only that one teacher guy that doesn't like him, and he doesn't even not like him. He's just like, I'm doing the class that you want to do, and that's it. Like, he doesn't even have any like adversarial thing about it, that other the teacher. He's just like, I'm doing it, whatever. And like, that's kind of it. Yeah, I think that is a problem. I also, how do you feel about the end, like the shooting? Because I don't know. I know how they build up to it. Maybe it's because I have a bias. Because, like I said, I think that Tim character just is too broad for me. But it felt like when I was watching it, oh, this is a tacked on thing. Like, this didn't happen. Like, I knew lots of things didn't happen, but like that felt a little bit too like things in the modern day with school shootings are happening. So let's put it in this. It didn't feel like natural to me as strongly. What about you?
I guess it's kind of hard to say, because as little as I remember about this film, that is one thing I remembered. So when I was watching the film and like every scene with him, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see where, this is leading to the conclusion I know about.
Yeah.
If I could just be a little bit more fresh with this film, maybe it would have felt a bit better. But I think, yeah, with all the foreshadowing they did, like, oh, he has a gun, and of course it would be real.
Yeah. I like, it's not like that they didn't do the legwork or put in the effort. It's just, for me, it just feels a little artificial. Like, it feels a little bit like a script is being played out. Like, oh, we've set the Chekhov's gun, and now we're going to shoot it in the third act, and it's really a bit too, for me, hammering in the messaging of the movie. Like, I felt like his speech that he gave and the demonstration he gave was enough.
Showing them their hypocrisy and how misguided they were.
I thought it was enough, and then ending with everyone being disillusioned about their own individualism.
And maybe some people would still be into it. Maybe.
Yeah, but in the end, it's just kind of like everyone just kind of walks off and is focused on the fact that a guy killed himself and the teacher's being arrested, instead of like, we get Marco and his girlfriend and her friend. That's kind of the closure we get out of the students. But there was so many, like, I'm not saying we didn't get any for others. There was like that other guy who was arguing about, no, we should let the wave continue or whatever, and then Raina kind of talked him into place. But like, I don't know. It's just kind of like, and the fat guy got shot, and off he goes. It's like, so what's he going to be like after he's all healed up? Is he going to be, how disillusioned is he, or how far in is he going to be? Because that could push you one way or the other, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this isn't a film where it's like, oh, well, we know where everyone's going from here.
Yeah, and I think just having Tim blow up at the end with the gun also serves as the fact that everyone would become wholly disillusioned in the wave as well. Like, it serves as that point of, well, if we left it with just him giving a speech, it would be like what you said, like how many would actually want to continue it on. But if you have like one of them be broken by this whole wave concept and shoot people, no one would want to be in the wave after that.
Yeah,
so
that is a good
it
point.
hammers that point in as well in a
Yeah.
narrative structure. But also, I don't know how I felt about the end shot.
I've had it's an odd one. He's in the back of a police car, and it's from the perspective of like the middle front of the car, and he's got his head in his hands, and then he looks into the camera with this like haunting realization.
And then it freeze frames, and then credits. And I
Yeah.
didn't know how to feel about that. It was a little bit too corny for me. I thought maybe just let it fade.
I think there was a review that went into a lot of detail somewhere. I think it was in like the reception section of Wikipedia as the link. Something like he must have realized his allusions to Hitler because Hitler did a very similar thing at this one point in history where this happened and he was shocked by it. I don't know. Felt like too much reading into it. It could mean anything, and that's the problem. We don't know what it really means.
My wife asked me this, and I wanted to ask you this. What was he being arrested for?
That is a good point. I think because he did the that whole meeting at school, right?
Yes.
I think that would have constituted his duty of care.
Yes.
So the fact that a student was shot and another committed suicide under his duty of care might have been a factor in that. But that might be...
Would you get arrested for that? Isn't that more of an internal thing with the school? Like, you don't get arrested for that, right? Would you? I don't know, like, I'm not saying that he wouldn't. I'm just trying to figure out, like...
I feel like when someone dies, police have to get into it.
No,
right?
but I'm saying, like, they wouldn't arrest him. They would take him in for questioning, but they had him in handcuffs, and he was arrested. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, sure, he failed his duty of care, but is that a criminal offense to the point in which you'd be arrested on site? Or is that more of a, you have to come down and detail the events of what happened? It's not like he shot the kid.
Yeah.
That's what I'm a bit confused on. Like, I was saying, is it maybe some would say an inciting of a riot or incident because he was a leader of this event? But, like, again, like, it makes a great visual, but I'm just not 100% sure of what it is that he's getting booked in for when he goes to the station. Like, maybe Germany knows.
You know what, Ryan? He was too shocked by what happened to ask, wait, what are you arresting me for? They actually had nothing on him.
Yeah.
When he gets to the station, they're like, we were bluffing.
They were Nazis.
Go home, we were bluffing.
Like, that's just a nitpick, whatever. But it's something my wife asked me, and I'm like, I don't know, honestly, because I see what you're saying, duty of care, but, like, the police aren't going to arrest you necessarily on site for that, right? That would be a big deal for the school, but, like, criminally, it's not like you got locked up in jail because you failed your duty of care as a teacher. They're putting handcuffs on him. They're going to take his fingerprints when he goes in. They're going to take a photo. Like, what for? Like, I'm not saying that he did act recklessly, but, like, what do the police know when they get on site enough to arrest him on site? Like, they don't know the extent.
Yeah, maybe it was just suspicion of something and they were going to find out more later.
I'm going to say it's an inciting of a riot or public whatever.
I'm going to say it's a prank, bro.
Oh, yeah, it's prank, bro. He did
It was a fake gun.
He did a Jake Paul and, like, ruined everyone's day and got arrested.
Tim had a movie fake gun where blanks aren't lethal.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about The Wave?
I think we've done a pretty good job of explaining it, talking about it.
Yeah, I found it very entertaining. A bit difficult to find, but it was worth a watch.
If anyone from Australia is currently listening to this episode within like 100 and maybe a dozen days of this episode being released, the film is still on SBS On Demand.
Yeah.
So you have access to that. Or if you have a VPN, maybe you can access it anyway.
Ooh, don't tell that to SBS.
I don't know how VPNs work, SBS. You have nothing on me.
So that's about it. Obviously, we both recommend this film. It's a very, I was going to say entertaining, but it's very thought-provoking. It's a very engaging film.
As a European film should be.
Oh, yes. All European films should be this way.
Just like the Polish movie Sex Mission.
Which is a really weird war story movie. With a Polish lictor as the main character. where it's just like, hello. Should we explain what the Polish like? We mentioned it, but we didn't actually explain it within this episode.
Sure. So, in most parts of the world, when you have dubbing in a film, you typically, hire a dub actor for each character, or you have, a few dub actors do all the characters. Basically, they're voice acting. They're doing voice acting over something that it had its original language voice acting. And Poland does it too sometimes, but the preferred method of, I guess you can say, localizing a film for Poland is not to dub or subtitle. I mean, you could subtitle over it if you want.
But they don't like subtitles.
Yeah, but the preferred method is to have what's called a lector, which comes, from the word like lector, like, someone talking to you, like from a lecture. And what it is there's a few people that do it in Poland, but there's one very prominent one, as prominent as, like a trailer voice person, who very monotonously, and not the original audio of the film isn't muted, it's just that whenever a character speaks in a film, it's quieted very, very much. And this guy, in a very monotone voice, just says the translation of what the line is.
With no differentiation between the voices or emotions. It's just kind of him being like, if
Ryan were to say...
Rosebud.
If Ryan were to be like, hey, my name's Ryan, he would go, cześć, jestem Ryan. And you would hear what Ryan's original line like very quietly in the background.
And Bartek told me about this, and then Rachel, my wife, and I looked this up, and it was immediately like, it's this guy. And everyone, it was like a bunch of Polish forums that are all like, this guy's amazing. I love this guy. Like, genuinely, Poland loves this preferred method more than any other. Like, to us, it seems absurd. Like, even to you, Bartek, because you've grown up here in Australia. But like, I'm sure if you grew up in Poland, you'd be like fine with it.
As a kid, I have seen a few things that had that lector thing in it, and I was like, what is this? Why can I hear the original language quietly in the background, but there's just this guy speaking over, monsters, little boys, little girls? And what is this?
What's the weirdest film that you've had the lector do?
I mean, the only thing I can remember seeing him in all the way was like my great aunt and great uncle had this like VHS of some like children's cartoon. I don't think I've seen a full film.
Wow.
Actually, you know what? Maybe I didn't see this in full, but I think when I was in Poland once, my cousin was watching Dude, Where's My Car with the lector, and that was a bit weird.
I got one question. What does he do with musicals? Like, if it's The Lion King, what does he do during the songs? Does he just sing the... Like, I know he won't sing them, but like he has to match the speed, right? Because that's a part of dubbing.
That's a really good question, because I know that like some dubs actually do dub songs, and that was a big thing at the Oscars this year with the Frozen nominee.
Yes, but I want to hear the Polish lector be like, Akuna Matata, which wouldn't have a translation, but like it would be like, I want to be king, or like, be prepared. And I want to hear him be like, we grew Kwanzaa, or whatever.
Hear like Randy Newman go, you got it, friend. You mean he'd be like, ty druha ze mnie masz. Well, but Toy Story actually did dub the song, so...
But those are soundtracks.
Yeah.
But like in a proper musical where you have their lips and all that, like...
I feel like they just leave it alone, but...
You're wrong, they won't.
I kind of wish they don't.
I don't either. I wish they would sing over it. Not sing, but
and the foreigners would be like,
word.
why did they fucking make him sing? Why couldn't he just monotonously say the line?
like a speak and spell. So that was our episode on The Wave and Polish lectors.
With a bonus about the lector.
With the lector. If you are the lector, please contact us and please lector over this whole episode, please. That would be amazing if we had a lector cut of this episode. And then when it comes to the bit where you are doing what he does, it still goes quiet and he gives a better Polish translation of what you said.
Yep.
That would be amazing. So, Bartek, it's my choice for next episode.
Mm-hmm.
Bartek already knows what the film is.
Yes, we made a back alley deal.
We done a lot of legwork. Well, when I say we, I mean Bartek has.
Well, you lent me stuff, so that's nice.
I want to watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, the David Lynch prequel film to the TV series Twin Peaks. Mm-hmm. So to get prepared for this, Bartek has watched the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks.
Yep.
It's a show that I've been meaning to give to Bartek for ages, but Bartek is notorious when it comes to, like, when you give him shows in particular, you don't really check them out as much.
Yeah.
You don't really watch as many TV shows, more movies or web things, and maybe if you do watch shows, they're like animes, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, Bartek will be like, I watched a show, and I'm like, was it an anime? Yes. Like, I never hear Bartek stroll up and be like, you know what I watched the other week? And I'm like, what is it, Bartek? Game of Thrones! Like, no, he doesn't watch normal mainstream shows, and Twin Peaks isn't a normal show, but it was mainstream at a point. So we will be doing Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me. I think there's only one cut of the movie because David Lynch always has creative cuts, like final cut of the movie. So don't need to worry about that. If you haven't watched the show, I mean, you can watch the movie, but it is a prequel, and if you have any interest in ever watching the show, please, for the love of God, do not watch the movie first. This isn't, because this is obviously a murder mystery show, and the prequel is about the murder, so...
In general, if a prequel is made after something, maybe watch that original thing first.
Yeah, unless it's explicitly stated by the creator and to do it the other way around. But yes, so, and for those curious, we will not be discussing too much the Twin Peaks Season 3 or Twin Peaks The Return because Bartek hasn't seen it. Mm-hmm. But I will touch on some certain points, nothing too spoilery or nothing major, just because the Season 3 does have some recontextualization of this film. But that's about it. By happenstance, Bartek, a few other podcasts that we know are doing some David Lynch stuff. The Contrarians podcast should be, by the time we do this episode coming out, an episode on Blue Velvet.
Okay.
And For Your Reference Pod doing Twin Peaks as well. They're watching the show and the movie. And I had to explain to them that they had to watch the movie in between season 2 and 3. They didn't realize that there was a movie.
Oh, okay.
So... And I'm like, oh, if you got to watch the movie or else season 3 was going to make little to no sense to you at all because it picks up a lot. So, yep, we're very keen on that. So, yeah, we will be discussing some plot elements of the first 2 seasons of the show as well, just because you kind of have to.
Yeah.
But the movie will do that also. So, that's about it. You can find us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter. We are always posting some fun questions and posts and sharing videos and pictures. It's a real fun time. Last week we did Who Killed Captain Alex, and there was lots of fun posts about that movie and questions.
Yeah,
like
the guy who recommended the film had a lot of comments.
Yeah, and if you like I asked what movie would you want the VJ Emmy treatment on, and there was a picture of Saving Private Ryan with the phrase "expect the unexpectable." So lots of fun stuff on there. We have our YouTube page. That's where we upload some of these. We upload these episodes too, but every now and then some little juicy nuggets. And we have an email, Bartek. What's our email if people want to contact us?
That's spitandpolishEd@gmail.com.
Yes.
Just like Ed from Twin Peaks.
Spitandpolished@gmail.com if you want to email us through with questions, thoughts on what we've said, movie recommendations, because as I said, we do cover movies that get recommended by the listening people, you guys at home, so it's always good to get a recommendation from you. If you want to give one to us, there's our email, and like I said, the social media is right there. Rate us, review us on whatever podcatcher allows it, because it makes us very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Or very sad, depending if your rating is bad. But don't do a bad one. Give us a good one. That's what we want. We want good ratings and reviews. That's what we want. We want nice things.
Yeah, we had that one review that was, 3 stars? That was a bit quiet. It's like, the one whose name is spelled how it sounds. Or
the
something.
main negative was... I thought the movie that was clearly titled Bubble Boy that came out in this specific year was a movie called Boy in the Bubble that came out in a completely different decade. But I guess it's their fault for making me think that, even though they clearly explicitly said it's this movie starring this actor directed by this director.
From this year.
From this particular year. And yet I still didn't understand, and I was so confused. It's
Where's John Travolta?
Where's John Travolta in a bubble? What are they talking about? Jake Gyllenhaal in a bubble? I don't understand. Well, that's your fault, lady. So, Bartek, a pleasure as always. And I guess I'll see you in 25 years when we cover the Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me. So until next time, listening people, remember, don't join a fascist regime, I guess.
You Germans are always on time.
Achtung, baby!